For everyone in Uganda, everyone's watching us from all over the world. My names are Sylvia Owori, and I'm going to read our press release as we're doing a clarification on Operation Wealth Creation involvement in the procurement of the COVID-19 relief items. The press release goes as follows. On the 15th of July of 2021, media reports cited that OWC, through the Office of the Prime Minister, was involved in illegal transactions in regard to the procurement of COVID-19 relief items in the form of food, flour, beans, which were distributed to vulnerable persons as classified by the government of Uganda. The Office of the Prime Minister, through its mandate, was in 2020, after the imposition of the lockdown, as a measure of containing the coronavirus pandemic, was asked to procure food items to be distributed to the vulnerable members of the population that were no longer working because of the lockdown restrictions. The National COVID-19 Task Force, through Office of the Prime Minister, then contracted two suppliers, Aponye and Mandela Millers, and tenders were sent to the latter, who failed to meet the required demand as stated by Office of the Prime Minister. Operation Wealth Creation, in response to this crisis being faced by the country, intervened by tapping into its network of over 2 million individual smallholder farmers. OWC sourced and procured food items which included 1.8 million kilograms of beans at a cost of 8.1 billion. It also further procured 4 million kilograms of maize flour at a cost of 10 billion shillings. Operation Wealth Creation Director is here to clarify that therefore the total amount on the procurement of the food items came to 18.1 billion and not 81.1 billion as has been falsely claimed by certain media houses. The allegations that our office received a tender due to illegalities is untrue, and the rumors are all unfounded. We responded to a crisis by utilizing our wide network of coordinated and mobilized agro-processors whom we used to secure for the dry rations that the government sought to give out during the lockdown. Of maize flour was, like I stated earlier, total amount was 4 million kilograms. And as you say, that was supplied by Wealth Creation Millers of Nakaseke. The total amount of beans was 1.8 kilograms of beans at a total amount of 8.1 billion. Our biggest supplier is the one who is from Rukungiri. We had to get him here. Out of that 8.1 billion, he supplied 6 billion. So the total amount of supply was 18.1 billion. 8.1 billion for beans, 10 billion for posho. So the total amount that's also on record, that is in the report, that is at OPM, that is circulated as an annex, is 18.1 billion. That total amount for all the supply for food and beans to OPM was around 55 billion. And Operation Wealth Creation supplied 40% of that. And it's because so many people had contracts, but they failed to supply on time. People were starting to die in their houses. So we are an intervention. We came in to help, to intervene. It was the first lockdown. Everyone was scared. All the shops were closed, so we couldn't even go to the traders downtown. So this gentleman he was God sent. He did the first supply of worth about 3 billion. And I only met him once. He went back to Rukunjiri. So how he mobilized, he would just call me and say, this truck is coming with this number and with this tonnage. You offload and go back. I'm so emotional because thank you for trusting me because you saved the nation. This Mr. Rishambu was God sent. He met me, I met him only once, and then he told me, Madam, I'm going to send for you beans. I'm going to mobilize already. I have so many farmers. So every day there were truckloads that were coming of beans. He only supplied beans. And we had a place there in Kawempe where we're cleaning it and processing it. But every time he sent a trailer or a truck, it came with 2 bags, bunches of matoke for me. So I wanted to get to support his presentation. I would like to start with the first question, where you said, how did we get the contract? Remember, we came in much later, when the supplies of beans had started, and on the ground, the beans, you saw for yourselves the pictures, that the beans were basically rotten beans. And then we started to find out, and then the president, during the COVID speeches, he also said, he reached out, and that is what he listened, that is what the farmer was saying, Mr. Kashanju. When they all had, so we started to get a lot of farmers calling us. He said, no, the president has said that it's us, the small suppliers, to supply. So when they kept calling us, we have beans, and there was hardly beans in the country, we approached OPM and we said, but we have suppliers. Can you give us even maybe 500,000 to that you see, so that there was no beans. Remember, everywhere was clocked down. Everywhere was closed. So starting the operation was very difficult. And that's why the beans that were on the market were the beans that we pick in the stores that were basically rotten. So they gave us the first contract, which was because in total, let's say for the beans, we got 1.8 million. But the first one was less than 800,000 kilos, which is 80 metric tons. It was very small. And that's why it was basically covered very quickly. So what happened, every time we delivered, even with the maize flour, they would give you a small contract because they had given out all the contracts, remember. So what they were doing, there's people that had not applied, so that had not supplied within 2 weeks. They would cancel their contract and then give. So every time we would finish our order, they would give us another order. And also, to reply the fact that, how did we get a tender? Remember, this time, not any one supplier there was any tender. Tender is when you put in the bid, and then they select you. This was a special procurement. If you look at the documents from office of the Prime Minister, it was a special procurement where they called upon most of the suppliers that they already had in the system. We were not part of the suppliers in the system, but because His Excellency went on TV and asked the farmers. So that is how a farmer like from Rukunjiri, he didn't have my phone number. He came looking for me, and they told him at that time I was at Kawempe. That's where he found me, and he told me I can supply you all things. So as we were completing all the small contracts we were getting, they would renew because most of the suppliers did not supply. And that you can verify with OPM, how we were getting. We never got one specific order, no. Maybe we should call it a competition. You see, I have my produce. I want to take it to the market. But there's somebody who will give me a certain price. But as a small farmer, I cannot reach Kampala. So obviously, there's somebody who come and buy my produce at a certain price. But if I brought my produce to Kampala, I would get more money. So let us call it a competition between the farmer and the businessman. So the farmer, this time they had an opportunity to compete and be able to have their product directly supplied to OWC. And remember, because we now have them, most of them on our radar, in our database. And OWC is mandated through mobilizing, organizing, and coordinating agro-processors across the country under the Community Agro-Processing Alliance, called CAPA, and the Wealth Creation Millers Association, which is called Wakruma. OWC organizes agro-processors, mostly comprised of smallholder farmers who have the capacity to supply food items in any required quantities and specification under the guidance and our oversight. Smallholder farmers produce much of the world's food in Uganda. They account for 80% of the food produced. Agriculture supports the livelihood of up to 23 million people in Uganda. However, they face major challenges in profitable market engagements, and they are at the very bottom of the value chain. Smallholder farmers were therefore strongly represented in the food assistance initiatives of government during the first lockdown, either as directed or indirected beneficiaries, and as sources of locally procured quality food. The food supplied by Operation World Creation to Office of the Prime Minister opened the way into the monopolized grain market space. This market space, up until that point, was reserved for only the big players in the grain trade market that don't always have the smallholders, farmers' interests at the forefront. As such, the big players were buying from the small-scale farmers at such very low prices, thereby driving them further into the subsistence economy. Our intervention as Operation World Creation presented an opportunity to bring the farmer into the value chain from farm to fork. OWC's Chief Coordinator, General Retired Caleb Akandanwaho Salim Saleh, has on several occasions also reiterated these facts and saying, our network of household farmers was mobilized to deliver this produce, and as an institution whose core mandate is to help alleviate poverty, we believed to be a good venture for the people of Uganda. This has opened up discussions on practical approaches to access the agriculture financing question and private-public partnerships. Our approach was unique, and it provided a win-win situation for all the value chain actors. It was an eye-opener on issues of quality and standards in the food industries, and we are glad that OWC took the initiative to this to sensitize the processors on this in partnership with the National Bureau of Standards. The OWC intervention and response revealed the capacity issue of the farmer to engage in grain value chain, and it demystified the common thought at Office of the Prime Minister that the smallholder farmers are not capable of meeting volumes required by them. OWC provided over 40% of the required volume. Operation World Creation. About Operation World Creation now. Operation World Creation, having been launched by His Excellency again in 2013, is an intervention that efficiently is there to facilitate national economic transformation focused on raising household incomes and transforming subsistence farmers into commercial farming. So in our first phase of the operation, OWC was a vehicle of enhancing the effectiveness of agricultural reforms to the households and the community level, with a much pronounced role in distribution of agricultural inputs through the National Agriculture Advisory Services, which is NADS, as well as enterprise development for value addition. Now, moving forward, OWC will continue to broadly support government interventions such as farming and agriculture, and also support non-farming, non-agriculture sectors, such as what has just been launched, which is the parish development model, which is going to be championed by Operation Wealth Creation. This is in order to transform into a monetized economy for over 3.3 million households that we must reach as OWC every year.
Amanya nze Semaganyi Elia, Vice Chairperson Wealth Creation Uganda Millers Association. Tuli basanyufu nnyo kubanga tuli mu OWC, Operation Wealth Creation, era aba OWC batuyisiza bulungi era batukutte bulungi nnyo mu nkola ey'okkulaakulanya abalimi baffe, abalunzi n'abakubi ba kawunga. Nze ngenda kwogera nnyo bano abakubi ba kawunga. Abakubi ba kawunga basanyufu nnyo kubanga abamu baafuna ebyuma okuva mu OWC ne mu government ne baba nga basobola bitambuza obulungi, era ne nebaza nnyo government kubanga supply eyo gye twasapplyinga eya COVID ey'omwaka guno oguwedde. Balimi baffe baali basanyufu nnyo n'abakubi ba kawunga ba millers baffe baali basanyufu nnyo ku lw'omulimu ogwo ogwatuweebwa, era twasobola okusupplyinga tani miliyoni 4, kilograms miliyoni 4, era twafuna obuwumbi 10 okuva mu office ya Prime Minister, era nitusobola ozisaasaanya mu balimi baffe n'abasuubuzi. Era abasuubuzi bangi nnyo baganyirwamu nnyo kubanga twasapplyinga akawunga mu budde ate era ne tusasulwa mu budde. Ekyasanyusa ennyo abalimi baffe n'abakubi ba kawunga, yadde waliwo challenges ezaaliwo naye nga buli kimu kyatambula bulungi nnyo. Twasapplyinga ebijanjaalo, tusapplyinga akawunga ku ssente ennungi kuba twasapplyinga nga kusinja 2500, era abalimi baffe ne bafuna bulungi ssente ezo. Ekyo tukyebaliza nnyo gavumenti ne OWC, era ne twebaza ne mukama waffe director wa OWC ne General Musale kubanga batukola bulungi nnyo. Abalimi baffe baali basanyufu nnyo ku lw'embeera eyo yonna yaliwo. Kale mwebale nnyo, mwebali ddala.
Tukuronda ahi twakubasa kubatira omuranga twaronda ahi twakubasa kuba ntwiha omuntu wakubasa kutudirectinga kutwara ki emere yitu eyitwine kunabire nintamburamu ndikwetora omuzaka wempe ndikwe kuvugana Madam Sylvia akagira taza government yitu nende ebihimba nende akahunga ebintu ebyo nibiboneka nagaruka muti abantu abutwina abantu abunye nabo abinye bembire nibingi munonga kandi emere tugine neye marira niko kutandikira aho emere ebihimbe binaresere abuna yebembire ebihimbe binaresere bikayo nkaza kugita munashanga niyo miliyoni 6 esente zo bakazinshashuraje kubaza impire nuko nazire abayinji bagenze banje mu mbera zabona hati batashitabashemerirwe na hati batwire no babuza ahi wagire hakaba wenshi kabataragarukire kugaruka mu system yo kugira ki yo kutwara ibintu byitu ahandi ngira nibyo byakubasa kuba nyine hihi kuganiraho nini bitumwe bari munonga